Hey you guys, so today we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about terms, vocab, stuff like that. So yesterday I asked you to download this, make a copy of this. If you didn't do this yesterday, go ahead and do that right now. You will need this throughout the rest of the unit. This unit is very term heavy. So I did this for my last trimester and actually worked really well. I decided to toss all the terms and definitions into one place. That way you guys can study for it from this. You can use this on your test. The test itself is very term heavy as well, so it should be beneficial for you in the long run. So like I said, if you didn't make a copy of this, go ahead and do that right now. Other than that, if you did make a copy, go ahead and get it out. And I also like you to go ahead and get out your notebooks. So get out your vocab sheet and your notebooks, whether you made a hard copy of the vocab sheet or typing it on your computer, go ahead and get that out. So yesterday we looked at the question, why does one location prove to be more profitable for a factory than others? Why are some factories more successful than others? And we looked at site and situation. Okay, site and situation, I gave you the definitions. You should have those on the worksheet that you turned in yesterday. So awesome job on that. If you want to write it down in your notebooks, go ahead and do that. But we are going to take a look at site and we're going to break it down for you. So take a look at your vocab sheet. This is vocab term number 1. You have site factors on there, and this is what site factors are. They're industrial location factors related to the cost of factors of production inside the factory. So think of the factory itself and what is being produced inside that factory, okay? What inside that factory plays some type of role in producing these products, okay? Whatever comes out of that factory, something inside that factory is happening to be able to make these products and stuff like that. So think of a factory. What factors of that factory are related to the costs of production inside that factory? Okay, I have 3 different site factors for you guys. And like I said, we'll go through them individually. So don't worry, I will slow it down. But as always, you can pause this video. So our 3 site factors are labor, capital, and land. Okay, think of the question I just asked you. What inside that factor helps relate to the production of the product in that factory? You have the workers who are making the product, okay? Capital is money. What kind of money do they make? What kind of money do they spend? And land, where is their factory located, okay? So we're going to go through each of them individually. So the 3 production factors that vary among site locations are number 1, labor. These are your workers, okay? This is kind of what kind of skills do these workers have? What kind of pay are they making? Are they making a lot of money? Are they making a little bit of money? Okay, what kind of, like I said, what kind of skills do they have? Are they able to produce this product in large quantities and stuff like that? Number 2 is capital. Okay, capital, the definition on here, and this is on your vocab sheet, so write it down. Capital are the funds needed to establish new factories or expand on existing ones. I want you guys to think of the corporations, Walmart, Buffalo Wild Wings, Culver's. There isn't just one, okay? I know Culver's goes across the entire Midwest. I don't know if it goes any farther than that. Walmart is all over the place. It's all the way down to Florida, California, stuff like that. The capital is the money that these factories need to borrow, usually to borrow, to build more Walmarts or build more Culver's, more Buffalo Wild Wings, more Dairy Queens, okay? Or just expand on their existing ones. Usually you'll see that they build new factories or restaurants or whatever rather than expanding on existing ones due to what's already surrounding it. If you take a look at Walmart in Wisconsin Rapids, there's really not a whole lot of room to expand on Walmart. So they take the money and they build more Walmarts, okay? It's a very, very successful business. On your vocab sheet, you have a definition, then you have an example. Under the example, you can literally just put money, okay? The money that these factories need to build or expand on existing factories. Oops. All right. And our last of the three production factors that vary among site location, capital, labor, and land. Okay. Take a take a look and think about where these factories are placed. Okay. Um, when people build factories or build their production business building, whatever, they think about the natural resources that they'll be able to get from that location, as well as the land itself. Okay, you guys took a look at site and situation factors yesterday, and how site is the site factors are like the climate and access to water and stuff like that. So if you take a look at this picture, it's got a lot of land. It's built on flat land, okay? It's got access to that little river right next to it, okay? If it needs water, it's got the water. What is the climate like? What is the temperature like? Does it get a lot of rain? Stuff like that. That is our land fact. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these three examples, these three site factors, and I'm going to break them down even further, starting with labor. All right, so labor intensive industry, this is on your vocab sheet, so go ahead and write this down. These are a lot of words, and I'm going to read them to you guys, but I'm going to kind of morph it all together for a shorter definition. So what is a labor intensive industry? It, by definition, is an industry in which wages and other compensation paid to employees constitute a high percentage of expenses. Okay, I highlighted that because that's important. What it's doing is it's referring to a process or an industry that requires a lot of people, a large amount of labor to produce its goods and services. Okay, so I'm going to reword this. Traditionally, labor-intensive industries um, are industries that produce a large amount of labor. So take a look at the pictures I have here. There's a lot of people to produce the large quantity of products that it needs, right? It's determined by the amount of capital needed to produce the goods and services. So the amount of money needed to produce those goods and services. Do they have enough money to pay this large amount of labor? Examples of a labor intensive industry could be mining. You need a lot of workers, like hospitals and healthcare, the food business, stuff like that, to keep it expanding, to try, and you need a lot of people to try and keep up with the things that you're producing, the goods and services that you're producing. All right, so make sure you get labor intensive industry. And like I said, feel free to pause this video whenever you need to. There we go. This is just a quick reminder, you don't have to write this down. You guys learned about Human Development Index, or HDI, in Human GOA. So this is just kind of a reminder. And I want to tie in developed and developing countries. So like I said, don't feel like you need to write this down. So HDI, or Human Development Index, is basically a summary measure of average achievement in key dimensions of human development. It's based on the standard of living, life expectancy, and knowledge. So you have developed and developing countries. Developed countries are countries that have progressed relatively far along the continuum of development. More developed countries have a higher HDI scale, okay? So once again, HDI, standard of living, how much they know, how much they can do, how long they'll live. Whereas developing countries are countries that may have made some progress towards development, but are still not developed. Okay, so the less developed you are, the lower you are on the HDI scale. Okay, that's talking about your labor, your workers. I would take a look at this, because this you will see on your test. If we don't get rid of the question, I had it on my test last trimester. This is a super easy graph to read, okay? You have countries listed on the side and your hourly wages in US dollars on the bottom, okay? Your developed countries are making more money. One, because their HDI is higher, and two, because that country can afford it. Okay, and then if you look at your developing countries, so South Korea and below, like Russia, Mexico, China, India, Brazil, aren't making as much because they're not developed countries. And we'll get into developed and developing countries and kind of why developing countries aren't developed countries and what their deal is with their money. Okay, why aren't they paying enough? Why don't they make enough money? Why don't they produce enough and stuff like that? So make sure you guys know how to read this graph. You will see it on your test. Okay, this one is a little bit hard to read and I apologize. The numbers are really blurry, but you will see this on your test as well. What the sweatshirts are comparing here is the cost of production is higher in the US than Asia because of the higher wages paid to the clothing workers. So the sweatshirt on the left is the United States and the sweatshirt on the right is Asia. Okay, and simply what it's saying is the cost of production is higher in the United States because they're making more sweatshirts and they can afford to pay their workers more. Therefore, you have more money, you can have more workers working, producing more sweatshirts and selling them at a higher cost. Okay, it's just one big cycle. All right, our second site factor example is capital. I want you guys to write this down, okay? Just in your notebook, make sure you kind of know what Silicon Valley in California is, and I'm going to explain it to you really, really quick here. So what's happening here is manufacturers, excuse me, typically borrow capital or funds or money to expand their factories, okay? I just explained that to you guys, kind of the expansion of Walmart and Culver's and stuff like that. So what's happening in Silicon Valley, California is the most important factor in the clustering of high-tech industries in California, Silicon Valley was the availability of capital. Okay, this is a huge cluster of factories and businesses and stuff like that. And this highlighted thing right here, it says high risk versus high reward. High risk, them borrowing money, or I should say people lending money or investing in this cluster of businesses is a high risk because roughly 2/3 of all high-tech industries fail. Okay, roughly 2/3 of all high-tech industries fail, which is what this cluster in Silicon Valley is. So that's high risk. So you can either play the high risk or you can play the high reward, which is 1/4 of all capital in the United States is currently spent on new industries in Silicon Valley. So if that high-tech industry does succeed and you invested in it or you loan money or whatever, the chances of you making money off that are very, very high if it succeeds. Okay, so you have a high risk because nearly 2/3 of all high-tech industries fail. But if it does succeed, if it's part of that 1/3, you will be making a lot of money. Okay, nearly 1/4 of all United States capital is spent on industries in Silicon Valley in California. All right, so here is where we come back to developing countries have a difficult time borrowing money. And here's why. So developing countries have an unstable political system. They have a lot of debt. They're not able to pay their loans back. And because of this, their economic policies are not good, or I should say economic policies aren't good, resulting in the unstable political system and high debt and stuff like that. So those are the problems why developing countries have a hard time borrowing money. But I can't say with these reasons, I can't say that I'm all that surprised because of these reasons. They have a hard time borrowing money. If they can't borrow money, they can't get their political system back up. Their policies won't get any better. So it's kind of just, like I said, an unending circle of just no money, okay? And our last site factor example is land. All right, so take a look at this factory. Back in the day, land to build a factory was always chosen in a city. And here's why, because you're close to a large supply of labor. Okay, cities are way more populated than countries or where you can find more land. So you have a large supply of labor. People are able to get there to work to that factory. And it's a big source of capital. Okay, a lot of money. You see more money circulating through the economy in a city than you do a country, right? Because that money is just circulating. There's more people. They're spending more. They're buying more. They're making more, and it's just a big circle of capital, of money. So like I said, take a look at this factory. Land was tough to find. Um, so like I said, they built in a city and they built a excuse me, they built and manufactured vertically. So they wouldn't expand out. What they would do is they would start with one level and they would build up because land was so hard to find, right? Take a look at this building. You can't, and my picture's in the way here, you can't expand outwards, right? So they had to expand vertically. Okay. So what they would do is they would bring in, so this factory, say they're making, I don't know, shoes, and you're bringing in all your raw materials in the top. And then what happens is as you build the shoe or as you make the shoe, it goes down a story. So you start with the raw materials on top, and then one step of the shoe is on the 5th floor, and then you send it down to the 4th floor, and they do something with the shoe to the 3rd floor, and so on, all the way to the 2nd floor and to the 1st floor. People do this because it's easier to transport those finished products out of the 1st floor rather than the top floor. Oops. Because odds are your raw products or the starting product is going to be way smaller and way easier to carry or transport than the finished product itself. I maybe shouldn't have used a shoe as an example because it's not that heavy and not that big, but think about something else that you're building, some kind of machinery. Okay, you start with those smaller raw products or raw inputs on the top, and as they get bigger, as they get heavier, you move them to the bottom. And then that way, once they hit the level floor, once they hit level 1, floor 1, the semi can just back up to the loading dock, whatever, and then they can just load them in, transport them out to the consumers, right? And then they'll start over again. I want you guys to take a look at this graph. This is vertical integration, and this is on your vocab sheet. So go ahead and write this down. What this is it's an approach typical of traditional mass production. So anytime you're making a large quantity of something, where a company controls all phases of a highly complex production process. Okay, that's all it is. If you want to draw this little graph here, you can totally do that. But like I said, this is kind of what I just explained. Your raw materials going in on the top. Okay, and then as you build whatever you're building, you move down the retail, and then the consumer is the last person to get the final product. But what vertical integration is, it's basically just an approach to manufacturing where one company oversees it all, oversees the raw materials, oversees the production, the final product, how the consumer gets the product, how they're using it. Okay, it's just where one company oversees everything. All right, I promise I only have a couple more slides for you guys. We just took a look at how back in the day factories were built upwards. But now if you guys think about factories, they are not so tall anymore. They're typically 1 or 2 stories, and they are very, very wide. Okay, take a look at this picture that I have here. You can totally tell where one building started and then it continued to move outward, right? This happens because, like I just said, they're only 1 or 2 story buildings. Usually manufacturing is happening on the bottom level, and then you might have offices or business stuff on the 2nd level, or you might use both levels for manufacturing. But typically they're not over 2 stories tall, and that's why. Land is a lot more accessible. I'll get to that in a second. But instead of moving from top to bottom, you're moving from left to right or right to left. Okay, a lot easier to do that than moving it down from the top to the bottom. Factories are built in suburban or rural areas now today rather than cities like they were back in the day. And why is this? This happens because, like I said, land is more available. Okay, it's more available now than when it was back in the day or whatever, whenever they started building cities or building in cities up and down. Land is a lot cheaper, okay? And it's a lot more accessible for transportation. Think about how much easier it is to transport huge trucks in this picture than it was in our last picture, okay? Cities are a lot more populated. They're filled with one-ways and roundabouts and smaller roads where you can have this factory, and how much easier it is for, like I said, big trucks, semis, stuff like that, to transport your finished product. We're not going to go over that. This is, I'm done lecturing, but this is what we're going to start off with in our next lecture. We just went over site factors, and then we're going to go over situation factors, which is proximity and transportation. Okay, so if I'm looking at the lecture I just gave and your vocab sheet, you should have site factors, you should have capital, labor-intensive industry, vertical integration, and I believe that is it. Your textbook does have a lot of these definitions. If you think you missed one and want to go back or want more examples on it, otherwise you can stop this video and go back, rewind, whatever you want to do. But this is where we will pick up on our next lecture.